Welcome everyone to the Frost Comprehensive Moriments tier list, where I will explain to you why these characters are the best characters and why I have the objectively correct opinions on all characters. And so we are going to start from the bottom and we're going to make our way up to the top with Horla, the worst Awaker in the game. Do not pull her, do not play her. Awful character, awful unit. Uh, Now that I have that out of the way, if you want a fair rating of this character, it is very enlightened dependent. I truly believe she is a completely useless unit at E0, but she does have some niche viability uh at E1 and then E2 as well. That it would realistically place her closer to these teams over here rather than all the way at the bottom. But since I dislike the character and I've given this community a 40-minute explanation why you all should dislike the character, I can safely say I will put her in this tier where you should never even think about touching her ever. Okay, now that that's out of the way, for the actual opinions, we have the D tier, and these are just like extremely weak units overall. You're basically not going to see people playing them. If you're playing them, they're very specific reasons. For example, Doll is only actually playable at plus 12 and like level 80. Her stats are just so bad. Her effects are very extremely weak. So literally anytime this character is on a team, it is because it is a very end game D-Tide team, which means it's one of her your like last picked units. Nymph and Pandia, you're only gonna use them for some very niche effect. Nymph because you're trying to proc poison effects. For example, in Wave 3 of D-Tide, there is commonly used team that runs G-Doll as a poison DPS, and Nymph sees play there as a way of proccing that poison with her Exalt. And Pandia, like you will basically never see Pandia play gameplay. No one, very few players actually have touched this character, and very few players believe in the character. She's only really exists for the occasional, very occasional permanent counter removal against like specific bosses like N or so. And then Alva is like universally regarded as one of the weakest characters in the game. Her kit is just extremely clunky and honestly pathetic. There is like one known Alva player who has her at like plus 12, level 90, all the whole works, and that person quit the game. So, yet that be your opinion of the character. And then for Erica, Erica is actually considered a pretty strong unit in most comps. She's a welfare unit, which means you can get her for free, quote unquote, like Aegis and Arita, which is a point in her favor. But the problem with Erica is that her zero cost, which is like her good effect, her good card is, in my opinion, very bad to play. It's very weak, and it will put in what is effectively a symptoming to your deck, aka an Erica card. And so you're either taxing yourself on Aerith, which is not good, or you're taxing yourself on card draw, which is even worse. And outside of that, only her Exalt's very useful, but she doesn't have an efficient way of charging it up. So she's basically only really giving you value like once or twice a run. Now, the one redeeming factor she does have is that she does have extremely high stats for an Ultra unit. And so if you do value those stats, then that is a reason to play her. But of all the units in this tier, like she is probably the most playable, but they're all, in my opinion, close to unplayable. Now C it's called the below average tier here, but really it's more of just the niche tier. like these characters don't really have a lot of a place in a lot of the game, but like they are semi-viable. Agrippa and Leia are very good examples of this. Both of them are just very, very weak supports compared to what most of the game has to offer you, whether that's in or outside of Karo. Because Karo has both Thighs, Pikmin, Aegis, like these are all very Faint. All these are very powerful supports, and these two just don't match up to any of those really. But they are still semi-valuable. They do their thing. They're just not very well, is all. Pharaohs really doesn't do anything outside of her Exalt that draws you cards. And so she actually does see decent play in like these really, really high level endgame comps. But like she's almost always a last pick kind of unit. Her actual kit is extremely weak. She's very similar to Erica in that sense, where you only really put her on for the Exalt, and you don't really do anything else with her. Just a very weak unit overall, and definitely the worst A-core unit. And now we have Liz, Sorel, and Wanda are like kind of a special case. And it's just that these characters do function. They can like clear endgame content and all that if you choose to invest in them. The problem is for them to perform basically requires more investment than anywhere else. And they're still like the weakest DP, like level per level, they're probably the weakest DPS that you can be running. These are all DPS characters, and they're all very, very, very weak. And then Orita is similar. Orita herself is a very weak unit. And she just struggles a lot before she gets up to OE. And to get up to OE, you have to have been playing this game for like 8 months minimum. And so that is why I place her here. She's just, for most of your time in this game, she's basically just gonna be unplayable. Not truly unplayable, but extremely weak and pathetic. And then Pikmin is a bit awkward. I put him in C tier. I put him in this tier because he isn't weaker than any of these units. He is probably better than all of them. Except for like in OE Arita. OE Arita does make it up to here, but it's like, I'm not gonna rate her just because she has a lot of power here. Rather, I put her here because it takes that much investment to actually make her useful. But Pikmin isn't necessarily a bad unit. He just is one of the weaker things you could be doing in Karo. And so that's why I put him here. If there was like a category between B and C, that's where Pikmin would go. That's his power level. Because B tier, where we're at now, you're only in B tier for one of two reasons. You're either an incredibly niche unit that is really like strong and useful in that category, or you're just like a generically powerful effect that's not necessarily like getting a lot of value. And so we have Uvosh and Hellet for that, and Lotan, right? As these DPS that you can play that are actually really good at OE. Like Lotan and Uvosh, you see the Lotan and Uvosh players always pushing them to do extremely difficult content. And but they are just weaker as DPS, basically as DPS than anyone else above them level per level. So that's why they make it into B tier. And then Giramona is similar. You could argue she's an A tier unit because she sees play in like half comp as like a very powerful support and stuff, but the reason why she's here is because she really doesn't see any play. You're only gonna see her as a like cast support, for example, or in very nichely as like a two-wheel support. And then you only really play her as a DPS if you're a new player and don't have any other option. And that's why she doesn't make the cut. Daffodil, I think it's probably fair to put her between A and B, but the what separates these two units is just the level of investment required to make them work. Like A tier units all are can be very powerful at low, even like before OE, low enlightened level. They are just very strong at like E3 and stuff. And then everyone below them kind almost either necessitates OE or are just not nearly as powerful, like level per level. And that's what Daffodil feels like a lot of the time. She can be really powerful at OE if you take the time to set her up. You can get like 50k counter in a turn, and like that can go all the way up to like 80k counter. There's like insane burst potential there, but and most of with like everything else, like it just kills basically. Pollux is just very similar to Uvosh and all of them in that sense. He's just an average DPS. He's okay. He's like not the worst, but he's not the best. And then we have Riker, who he is strong. He could be placed up here with the A tier units if he just wasn't niche. You really don't play a lot of Riker. If you want that card draw engine, he is very good. But you generally speaking don't need the Riker. And then Tulu and Murphy are over here because they just require OE to function and are otherwise pretty weak, and the very least much weaker than everyone else on this list. And also because they're A core, they're not usually that valuable. You don't really use them a lot outside of A core, for example. So that's just a bit more on the niche side. Ogier he is solid, but like he's just a very solid like support if you just want that just solid support. Same with Nautila and Goliath. It's like these are all just okay supports that are decent in a comp that you're running them. And then versus like Karen and Songa, where you just don't see them anywhere. You're really only putting Karen and Song into these very, very niche teams. Like Karen is really only played in either Cath or Mono Will as like just this Aerith generator and these like really strong team comps already, but most of the time she's not even that necessary in the comps, and so that's why she makes this B tier. And then all that left is Celeste and Tinkt, and Celeste has one of the best exalts in the game, but she doesn't do anything else outside of it. She does occasionally apply weakness, which is nice, but yeah, Celeste is just probably the best at B tier. She's just a very solid unit overall, but doesn't really apply any powerful effects. She's not too special. And if you don't need her Exalt as like a revive, then she's not doing anything. And then Tinkt is just, she's okay. She got buffed recently, and her Exalt's okay. It's like she doesn't really do anything that's too powerful, but she's like good enough to see at play that enough that I put her into B here. And so now we're in A tier, which is like the more interesting tier. We have these three: Salvador, Dorsane, and Corpo. And the reason why I put them all up here is very simple. They are very powerful DPS, but they're better than all the DPS below them, and they're worse than all the DPS above them. Like it's that simple. And even in this row, Salvador is better than Dorsane because Salvador can work consistently A5, even though Dorsane does have higher numbers. And then Dorsane's is better than Corpo, right? So the reason why they're in this tier is because they are extremely powerful DPS. All of them can make A5. Those two, Corpo and Dorsane, not usually very consistently, or it requires like a lot of investment, but like very awkwardly, but they can all A5. And the Rat is nice because the Rat is a really powerful DPS early game, a very mid DPS mid game, and then a really powerful support in the end game. She's one of the best endgame supports because she could just provide so much damage to your team with her Rouse and Exalt. And then Lily was literally the best shielder in the game for a long time. and so that's why she's here. Don't she's now been beaten out by Caster and Kath, but she is still an extremely powerful shielder and just a powerful unit overall. And on the poison team especially, she truly can shine because she can just like instantly kill enemies. She's basically like better than Nymph in that sense because she can proc poison. Aegis and Faint, of course, are the two princesses of Karo. If you're not running at least one of these in a Karo comp, then you're probably just not running a Karo support. I, there's only one other support in Karo truly that can even compare to them, and that's of course the Queen of Karo, who I will get to in the S tier section. And so you'll notice G Ramona was in B tier because G Ramona herself is a very niche unit, somewhat playable as a support, somewhat playable as a DPS. Actual normal Ramona is just a very solid DPS, solid support. Sorry, she is a Keyflare support, which is really good for Arc 2, end game and late game content. Her mechanic is just that she draws cards very well. Her Exalt is that you get to grab a card from your deck, which is similar to Pharaoh's but better. And then she has the two costs, which is the Assault Thesis, which is also really good. And even her Rouse is like just nice because you can just play cards for free, right? So she's really nice there. And then 24 is the same as like these three, where she's a very powerful DPS. She just doesn't compare to the Esther DPS. I should have placed her over here with the others, but I just didn't fully proofread this list when I was making it, and it doesn't really matter. They're all in the same position. And now we have Kaikus and Winkle, and they're both interesting because they basically do the same thing. They just sit there and press their Exalt button, but they do it better than Erica because one, they both have a lot. They can both self charge themselves very easily. They both have a 20 alien miss self charge, and they also just are much better when it comes to just sitting there doing nothing. Erica adds cards to your deck. These Kaikus takes a card out of your deck with his protective effectively because it's -1 draw that you can draw. And Winkle also has the barrier removal and the weakness application. And generally speaking, their two Exalts are just more powerful than what Erica does. And so Cassia, full disclosure, cannot tell you what she does. I know she has her poof and her telekinesis, and they're really good for like card draw and stuff, and they're very powerful cards. But I don't know what she does. I heard she got buffed recently, and that made her really powerful, and that's why I put her up here. I trust the community's judgment that she is an extremely powerful unit. She might actually be a B tier unit, according to my prerogatives, but she is, at least somewhere around here. And then Hamlet and Miriam are very simple. They are extremely good when you want to run them. They are very powerful supports. Miriam is arguably the best A-core support for what she does. And then Hamlin is just one of the best supports in the game, even in endgame. His best position is in chapters 8 and 9 where he actually just solos, but yeah, these two are definitely some of the best supports in the game, in my opinion, and I love them both. And so, I mean, all that's left is just the S tier category, and I split it into the 4 best DPS in the game, and then the 3 best supports in the game. And I will start with the supports. Clementine and Thighs are the 2 best supports in the game, and it's a competition to see which of them is better. With G-Doll being at OE being easily the 3rd best support in the game. Easily. And these 3 all are very simple in what they do. Practically everything. They heal. They give you alien miss. They apply weakness and Vaughn and blah 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 blah. Like, if you don't know why these characters are good, you are either just very new to the game, or have never actually played any of them. Because the moment one of these three sports are on your team it usually functions way smoother no matter really what it is. Especially with Thighs and Clem specifically. G-Doll, depending on the team, it could be a very niche team and you might not want G-Doll's effects as much, but these three supports all make it really make great ranking teams. And now we have the DPS. And the DPS are very simple, right? They are just the highest damage dealers in the game. They all have like self-sustain abilities and all that. Cath and Caster give you like insane shielding, give themselves insane alienness recharge, and they just stall long enough to just one-shot enemies. Gellet, of course, is the highest DPS character in the game, right? You play her exactly the same every time and kill everything on like turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 if it's a boss, you know? It's really that simple with Gellet. And Tawil's interesting because realistically, Tawil's true damage numbers are more aligned with like what Dorsane and Salvador and 24 puts out. But compared to them, she's much faster and more flexible. With Dorsane, if he's not one-shotting the mobs, he's getting one-shot himself. With Salvador, he just does what Tawil. He takes so much time to kill mobs and bosses compared to how long it takes for Tawil normally. And, any of the other DPS, meta DPS. And then with 24, it's similar to Dorsane, where she's very feast or famine, where she will just like one-shot stuff or be getting one-shot effectively. But Tawil instead has like infinite utility, infinite resources available to her, and what basically separates the S tier DPS from the A tier DPS is that the S tier DPS can pretty safely clear all content that is given to them if you choose to equip them with the right resources and if they're invested well enough. And the A tier ones don't have that guarantee. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. It was just meant to be a quick explanation and of why everything is placed in the position it is and what it means to be in that position. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you disagreed or agreed, feel free to say so in the comments. I always love to hear what you guys have to say, and have a good day.